At UFC Prague, Stefan Struve fought in the co-main event against Marcos Rogerio De Lima. The main event of that fight card was Thiago Santos versus Jan Blachowicz. But in the co-main event, Struve got knocked down within the first 15 seconds of the first round. Was fighting off his back for the rest of the round, but was able to survive. Came out in the second round, was able to get a takedown pretty quickly against Marcos Rogerio De Lima. Ends up getting on top, controlling from half guard, looking to pass from half guard, unable to do so initially. Sets up an arm triangle, passes to mount, and then gets the finish from mount. I'm going to break down how he got that finish, starting back from his attempts to pass the half guard. But it's also worth noting that after the fight, he did announce his retirement. He was a little bit, he didn't want to fully commit to it. He was saying there's a chance that someone could convince him to come back. He is still at a fairly young age. I think he's like 31 or 32 right now. So he is physically capable of fighting still. He obviously just got a win at the UFC level against a guy who I think is on his 10th UFC fight. So he's capable of competing at that level. But it seems like with him, he had some heart issues before, where his career almost got ended early. He's fought through it, and it seems like this is a good time for him to go out. And it seems like in all likelihood, it's going to be the end for him. So to break down what he was doing, he did a good job of on top from controlling with the far side underhook here, which is what you want to do from top of half guard. The underhook battle here is very important because if De Lima is able to get the underhook here, he can turn onto his right shoulder and then either come up to a single leg or kind of use that to create some space and come up on some sort of shot to either go for a sweep or to get the fight back to the feet. But that's never able to happen for him. So one of the passes that we see Struve try to use is an instep pass here. He also does a cut pass. Now, what's interesting with Struve is that he's so tall that a lot of times with these instep passes, it's a little bit easier for a shorter guy to pull off. But for him, with his legs being so long, he wasn't able to do it. So what he does is he takes his left instep here and pushes it against the inner thigh of De Lima's right leg. But the problem is that while he's able to create that space, he's not able to pull his right leg all the way out here. And De Lima actually kind of uses like a lockdown hook here to control and keep him from getting that leg out. So you can see he's pushing forward, driving his pressure upwards, but this leg's not going anywhere. So you can see all the space that's created right here. Kind of gave up on the underhook there, which is fine because he's trying to drive forward, but this leg's just not coming through because of the lockdown and because his leg's so long. But primarily because of the lockdown by De Lima. So he's still trying to drive forward. De Lima's doing a good job of keeping up. He's starting to lose it here. This is like he's barely got control of the toes at this point. But on the same token, Struve is pushing his weight so far forward that he's actually going to create an opportunity for De Lima that De Lima ends up missing out on. You can see De Lima trying to turn here. Yeah, so he's actually trying to turn. He wants to get out on his side, though. Right now he's going straight head to head with it, or straight. He's going straight on. He wants to actually cut an angle here and turn over on this hip. So this hip should turn over in this direction, but he doesn't do that. I don't know if he's just exhausted. It kind of, based on how the finish ended up looking, it seems like De Lima at this point was pretty much spent. I don't know if it was all the energy that he used in the first round or with Struve being a guy who usually cuts down from about 270 to get down to 265. Maybe it's just having a guy like that on top of you in the second round. Maybe after an adrenaline dump is a little bit much for him. He also could have potentially, it looks like he kind of tried to do it there. He could use that knee to boost him forward and create some space and come up on a single leg, either to get on top or to at least create a scramble where you can get out and get back to neutral, but unable to do so. So here Struve is going to drive him back down. And now Struve's going to start looking for a cut pass. So typically what a cut pass is you're going to want to have one leg based out here. So it'll kind of be out at that angle. Then you got the knee across. You're going to want the knee, though, to point inside. And that knee is just going to slide right through. And then you're going to pass through that way. So let me try to take that out so that doesn't stay in the way the entire time. So let's continue. So he steps out. Now, one of the issues that Struve has here, and part of it could just be that his legs are so long that it makes it a little bit more difficult for him to pass guard in some of the traditional ways. Obviously, we just saw with the instep pass that he wasn't able to get through because his leg was so long that it ended up getting caught on a lockdown just at the edge of his foot. But here he doesn't really get his leg out all that far. And the knee, it's okay for the knee to be pointed outwards at a point to control the opponent. But when you actually want to go forward with the pass, you want to have it cut inside. But here he kind of realizes he's not going to get it, so he just settles down into a half guard. The next thing he's going to do is look to work for that arm triangle. So he's going to sneak his head in here. Now, it's worth noting for De Lima, In this position, you're mostly safe. You're most likely not going to get caught. But for the guy on top, you can use the arm triangle to pass. Now, typically, if you're going to do that, you want to kind of cinch it up, lift your hips up in this direction, and then drive forward with your shoulder into the head. And then using that pressure, you can kind of create some space, occupy their hands, and then be able to pass the guard that way. Oftentimes, I like to do that and then finish with like a sort of like an instep pass, sort of like what he attempted to do earlier. But it actually didn't end up needing to do it in this fight. So he gets a hold here. De Lima's really not doing all that much defensively. And you can see right here, he had the leg trapped. He just opened the leg up here. And it seems like at this point, the idea for him is he's going to try to roll. But with a guy like Struve, who again is 265 plus pounds, not going to be an easy guy to roll over, especially when he's driving his shoulder right into your head. So Struve's able to step in him out. But what it did do is it broke the grip of the arm triangle. So Struve no longer has the arm triangle here. So he's going to have to work his way back into it if he wants to get it. But he does just that, and De Lima really doesn't offer any resistance at all. And at this point, if you want to understand the mechanics of an arm triangle, just like any other blood choke, the idea is that you want to cover both ends of, or both carotid arteries. So you're going to have one on this side, but then you're also going to have one on this side. So this carotid artery right here, very easy to cover. That's the one that you're just going to cover with your arm. But the tricky part in both an arm triangle or even like a leg triangle is getting this second one right here. So in order to close that one off, what you have to do is kind of get underneath the shoulder and press that shoulder into the neck to block off that carotid artery. So that's what Stefan Struve is going to have to do here. And typically when you see an arm triangle finished, the reason why guys will often step off over in this direction is so they can get their body over, their body weight will be right over here, but then they'll press their body in to put more pressure on that carotid artery. In this case, Struve doesn't even get to that point where he needs to. Part of it could just be because he had a really tight squeeze from out, but part of it could also have been because at this point, De Lima was exhausted and didn't have a whole ton of fight left in him. So let's get to that part real quick. So now he's going to keep working. Now, again, as I mentioned before, this space right here is what De Lima has to protect if he wants to avoid getting tapped here. You can grab the wrist, but normally if you're De Lima, you can either do the answer the phone thing where you're sort of like using the left hand, and then you would have the left hand touching your own ear. And by doing that, you can create some space. Another thing you can do is when you connect your hands, you can use this right arm and then force it over to the left to create some space. But he really doesn't do either of those. He just kind of hangs here, stops defending. And even here, like this choke it's not in yet, but the defense from De Lima is just kind of non-existent. He's just sort of waiting here. It's kind of bizarre. Now he's connecting his hands, which is good. But even still, he's really not pushing in all that much. He's just kind of waiting here, sort of oddly. Struve is starting to drive in. You can see him sort of dip down here to get a little bit lower on the shoulder so he can drive forward and really put some pressure on that carotid artery. And De Lima taps. So a big win for Stefan Struve. Good way for him to go out as a winner. Has had a lot of big fights in the UFC. Has won some, has lost some. The biggest win for him, obviously, being the knockout of Stipe Miocic, who some consider to be the greatest UFC heavyweight champion, with him having the record for most title defenses. So for Struve, he was talking in the post-fight show about potentially coaching now. He still wants to stay involved in the sport. He'd be a good guy to be an MMA coach. Seems to have a pretty good understanding of a lot of the aspects of MMA, and he can definitely help out a lot of people. And if he decides to stay in Florida where he was for some of his camps, or whether he wants to go back to the Netherlands and have a prominent MMA gym out there, either way, hope for the best for him, and hopefully he enjoys his time as a coach. And the next time we see him in the octagon, it'll be with one of the fighters that he's cornering.